Last month, during the BC election campaign, the David Suzuki Foundation claimed it had a bombshell study against the BC oil and gas industry, in particular our fracking industry. The research was conducted in partnership with St. Francis Xavier University, all the way on the other side of the country in Nova Scotia, and claims that, quote, new science reveals unreported methane pollution from BC's oil and gas industry threatens Canada's climate commitments, unquote. Now, before I even get into the flaws I've discovered in this report, I always smirk when people talk about Canada's climate commitments. And that's because it really doesn't matter what we do here in Canada when we look at things on a global scale. We are less than 2% of the world's emissions. We are not a significant player in worldwide emissions to even make a measurable difference, even if we went full LEAP manifesto and went to a zero-emission economy. But with that being said, pollution is a local issue and one people tend to react to, especially during an election. But is this study a true reflection of BC's oil and gas industry? Are we really allowing renegade methane emissions to run wild up in the Peace River District? Well, no, not according to this study, and let me tell you why. The study has numerous flaws, some of which the Suzuki Foundation deliberately ignored in their report. First, the study concedes that the area in which they were testing is also a big-time ranchers district, and therefore they could not rule out the fact that the increased levels of methane they were picking up wasn't from, well, frankly, cow farts and cow burps. The researchers wrote, quote, no unique thermogenic tracer was used in this package of surveys to discriminate biogenic methane sources, such as cattle, that may have been present on the well sites at the time of surveying, unquote. The researchers also conceded two other points the Suzuki Foundation failed to mention in their report. When discussing the readings and testings at newer well sites, the researchers wrote, quote, relatively little of it emits, presumably because of the improved modern practice, integrity, and better design of new valves, seals, and flange gaskets, etc., unquote. And when comparing the emissions in BC's fracking industry compared to the US, they said, quote, in comparison to studies at select US natural gas sites, our results suggest that the natural gas activity in the Montney Formation may emit both less frequently and less severely than US comparators, unquote. So not only were the researchers not able to rule out that the increase in methane did not come from the cattle ranching industry, they concede Canada is doing better than our American neighbors. And any new wells show very few emissions. This is great news if we continue to develop this industry and drill new wells. But I wanted to give the Suzuki Foundation a chance to respond to my questions and observations. I reached John Waring, the lead researcher from the Suzuki Foundation, by phone to ask him some of the questions I had about this report and research.
The actual report, there is a mention in there about methane from cattle, but it doesn't say that we couldn't rule out that there was the results we were seeing was methane from cattle. It basically indicated that the technology that we used was sensitive enough that it could pick up methane. And that's true, because when I was in the vehicle, we would be driving along a road and pass a farm, and you would see a slight spike in the methane. So the only logical thing we could think of at that point was, well, either there was a nearby, maybe wetland, or the cows were belching.
Would you concede, though, that the new wells do have better integrity, like the researcher said, improved modern practice, integrity, better design of new valve seals and flange gaskets, etc. Well, is that a fair statement? That the newer wells do a better job in preventing the methane emissions? I'm not expert enough to be able to make that determination.
As you just heard, John Waring had answers and some good spin for all my questions, and yet he did concede that the new wells did show less emissions and that the researchers couldn't rule out that some of the methane came from local ranchers. One final observation I made from the study, that it was curious that the researchers came all the way from Nova Scotia, a province that has a moratorium on fracking, not from the University of Calgary or Alberta or even the University of Northern BC. John Waring told me that they did reach out to those other institutions and even tried finding industry partners as well, but were consistently turned down. Now, could that possibly be because there is a mistrust out there towards the Suzuki Foundation and their history of attacking Canadian industry, all while taking foreign donations from the Rockefeller Foundation and Tides? Well, I think that's highly likely. For the Rebel.Media, I'm Christopher Wilson. One thing I love to do is myth bust and poke holes in all these studies attacking our industries. So make sure you never miss any of my reports. Click subscribe on our Rebel Canada YouTube page.